His punching power is simply scary. And his physical strength is legendary.
Big trouble!
After meeting with his titanium fists, opponents fell breathless bodies in the ring.
He's ready to go! And there he goes!
George Foreman is a man of the era whose name is engraved in the Boxing Hall of Fame with 2 bloody gloves. He won the Olympics at 19 and at 45 became the oldest world champion in heavyweight history. He dedicated his life to 2 things, boxing and God. Today, we are going to introduce you to the amazing story of Big George.
It's a little too long. They're both fighting. Lyle, gotta come back with down to the canvas.
George Foreman was born on January 10, 1949 in the suburbs of Houston to a large family. He was a troubled teenager and showed no interest in school despite his mother's best efforts. At 15, Foreman dropped out of school and got in trouble with the law. But then he changed his mind and at 16 enrolled in the job course, where young people were trained in various working professions.
Well, after joining the Job Corps in '65, I've learned a skill in electronics and I've received my high school diploma equivalency, and I'm pretty much on the right road. I've learned to set goals, and the Job Corps is a helpful program to me. And most of the guys in the program now have a lot in common with me, as I was in '65. So I suppose the program is one of the best.
Later, the guy moved to the more promising California, where he became interested in American football. His favorite player and idol was Jim Brown, but George made his choice in favor of boxing. While still in the employment corps, Foreman discovered in himself incredible strength when working on a heavy bag. In addition, the young man was characterized by impressive physical data and dimensions. By the age of 18, his height exceeded 190 centimeters. George began to engage in competitive boxing while serving in the Army in 1966. And in 1968, he went to the Olympic Games in Mexico, having only 22 amateur fights. In the first round, Foreman had to work hard to pass the decision of the judges of the Pole Luciano Trello. But the next 2 opponents from Romania and Italy lost to the American heavyweight early. In the final fight, all the power of the Houston bulldozer felt the Soviet boxer Yunosh Chikulis.
George pouring it on.
So at the age of 19, George became an Olympic champion and the main sensation of the tournament in Mexico.
I'd like to show you guys my gold medal. Real gold for a change.
Foreman was honored to personally meet with U.S. President Lyndon Johnson and receive a valuable award from him. After the Olympics, Big George moved on to professional boxing. His first trainer was Charles Broadus, better known as Doc Broadus. The heavyweight named 3 things that will help him become a world champion.
We talked about Joe Frazier the last time you and I talked. Again, let me ask you a question I think we touched on last time, and that is, if you were to fight Joe Frazier tomorrow, how would you fight him?
Oh, and I said then I think I'd pull out my knife or something, huh? And cut him up.
Any way you could. Huh?
Yeah.
Just a win is a win, I guess.
A win is a win.
Doc Broadus knew a thing or two about proper process control. After winning the Olympics with Foreman, he and Foreman traveled to the gym of one of the most feared punchers in boxing history, Sonny Liston. There, George became his regular sparring partner.
Oh, Sonny Liston, no doubt the scariest human being I've met in the ring.
I never took a step back, but no one made me box. On Sonny Liston, I was his stablemate, and we would spar, and I knew then I had to back away.
Probably the strongest heavyweight I'd ever dealt with. The only man to make me back up consistently. He'd look at people and just look right through them, wouldn't answer questions, and he wasn't putting on being mean. He was just not the nicest fella you'd meet. And I said, if that's the way you have to be heavyweight champ of the world, I'm gonna be that.
If he would come to me, I'd kill him. And if he run, I'm gonna catch him and kill him.
If he comes to me, I'm gonna break his neck. And if he chooses to run away, I'm gonna catch him and break his neck.
And adjustments to his training were handled not only by Broadus, but also by Dick Sadler, Liston's head trainer. Often Foreman would personally train the guys in the gym. despite preparing for important professional fights. However, this did not prevent George from stabbing his opponent's chins like nuts. In just 6 months, the American knocked out 15 opponents.
Belaboring Hazelton and down. He's got Waldhelm in trouble, and Waldhelm goes down.
And although their level was questionable, Foreman was not stingy in predicting his future. By October 1971, Big George still didn't feel a world title around his waist, but had racked up a solid 32-0 record by then, knocking out one fighter after another. He was beating not only local cab drivers and longshoremen, but also big-name guys like George Chavallo and Gregorio Peralta.
Battered in his own corner, and Irving Ungerman is manager.
In 1972, Foreman was a major title challenger with 37 wins. Heavyweight king Joe Frazier couldn't ignore the knockout artist from Texas. The boxers signed a contract for January 3 and crossed paths several times before that date at various events. Kingston, the capital of Jamaica, was chosen as the venue for the fight. The local stadium sold 36,000 tickets. Joe opened for bookmakers as a confident favorite because just under 2 years ago, he beat Muhammad Ali himself.
Muhammad Ali gamely fights back.
In addition, Frazier had already owned the belt for a number of years and had a record of 29-0, and the level of the opponent was much higher than that of Foreman.
A dynamite left hook and Bob.
The main intrigue of the battle was the knockout, but the question was who. Both had a punch and liked to go home early to their wives. From the start, Foreman lunged at Frazier, but he did not falter and tried to lay siege to his opponent with his left hook. The challenger relied on body punches that could cut down even a bull. The champion successfully applied his best blow from the arsenal, but George's concrete head did not even move. Frazier skillfully used his speed advantage, but his physical strength was not enough to match Foreman's. Joe had never had to deal with such an armored train before. Realizing that Frazier didn't have enough knockout power, Big George went for broke and sent the champion to the canvas.
Foreman having a very good round. Frazier went down.
From that point on, the initiative went to the challenger. The cold-blooded puncher delivered a parade of knockdowns, forcing the legendary Frazier to lie on the floor like a sack of potatoes.
Frazier has never taken this kind of punishment. And it goes down at the bell. Arthur McCanny rules.
Muhammad Ali's trainer, Angelo Dundee, who was sitting ringside, literally begged the referee to stop the killing, but the bloodthirsty Arthur Mercante was out for blood.
Joe's about to go down, he says. It goes down again. 45 seconds to go in the round. Joe's been down 4 times. It goes down again.
It wasn't until Frazier's 6th fall that the fight was finally stopped.
Joe is down for the 6th time. Let's see if the referee stops it. The fight is over.
Foreman became the new absolute world heavyweight champion at the age of 24. The young knockoutist was overwhelmed by unprecedented fame. Attention of journalists, meetings with the first persons of the state, numerous interviews. Big George made his first title defense against Ken Norton, and the fight itself took place in the Venezuelan capital, Caracas. Norton had a good boxing background, and a year earlier, he had defeated Muhammad Ali himself.
Has he gone back that far? That's not easily believable.
Despite the fact that Ken gave a rematch to the famous heavyweight, he again had an equal and tough fight.
Norton has knocked out 22 men in his 30 victories.
Experts seriously believed that Norton would create a lot of problems for Foreman. Unlike Frazier, Norton gave the center of the ring to George and focused on the second number.
A little bit more patient than we've seen him. That was certainly the style of dragging that right foot behind him. Vicious.
Unfortunately for Ken, Foreman already in the first round felt the distance with his front hand and then brought in the brand name hammers.
Straight left hand thrown by Foreman, taken on the face, and a right hand to the kidney. That's a punch you got to watch out. There's a good left hand, the best right.
The champion looked sprawling and occasionally skipped toward him, but his cast iron head allowed him to fight that way. Surprisingly, Big George worked the jab a lot and successfully, something even Ali couldn't manage at times. While Norton glared at Foreman's left hand, the latter landed a hard right uppercut and repeated.
Coming up to round two, first round very even, maybe a slight edge.
The knockdown wasn't hard, but it looked like Ken Foreman had broken down. George cranked his atomic bombs to maximum speed and didn't let go of the lost in Venezuela reality Norton.
Caracas, Venezuela. George Foreman, Ken Norton on your left. Now watch, he slips a punch and out of that corner. This is what Norton must do. Long right hand that lands just in the left hand.
A strong challenger like Ken didn't even last 2 rounds. Foreman's name became even more intimidating, and promoters saw only one big fight for him against Muhammad Ali.
I'm out smoking, and I ain't gonna be joking. I'll be pecking and a poking, pouring water on his smoking. This might shock and amaze you, but I will retire Joe Frazier.
The organizer of the fight was one of the most brilliant promoters in the history of boxing, Don King. Only he understood the real scale of the fight, so he decided to make record money on it. For financial support, King went to the African state of Zaire, which was ruled by the mad dictator, Mobutu Sese Seko. The promoter convinced him of the benefits of organizing a big boxing match for the sake of Zaire's international reputation. Mobutu agreed to assume all necessary expenses, including the large fees of Foreman and Ali. Boxers gave endless interviews before the fight. Especially memorable was Foreman's phrase, "You can't silence him." The man has been saying that since he learned. People have broken his jaw, sent him to knockdown. One guy kicked his leg so high he almost flew up, and he got up and started talking again, so I can't shut him up. The fight was originally scheduled for September 1974, but due to a dissection that Foreman suffered in sparring, the event was postponed until late October. Despite the minor incident, Big George was a 3-1 favorite. You bet he was, as he had knocked out people who had beaten Ali in 2 rounds. Muhammad chose a rather cunning strategy before the fight. He regularly jogged with the local population, many times organizing open training sessions. Zaireans so penetrated to the openness of their idol that it came back to Foreman. When the boxers entered the ring, the audience shouted Ali Boumé, which meant Ali, kill him. The fight started at 4 a.m. Zaire time, so that as many American fans as possible could see the fight live.
I never lost as a professional, and I intended to win the easiest fight of my career.
George was extremely uncomfortable with Muhammad's style of work, and because of the psychological pressure, he just spun into the fight without thinking about his gas tank or tactics.
Far corner. There's that left uppercut and jab.
I get into the ring with the guy, I bluffed him, I done everything. Beat him up, basically for about 5 or 6 rounds. I thought it was easy.
Ali moved a lot, fired sharp jabs, and if things were going wrong, just grabbed Foreman by the neck and pulled him down.
The idea is to back him off into the corner, and when they get tight...
In the second round, Muhammad suddenly changed tactics and just stood up against the ropes. George didn't recognize the ruse and rushed to land his best body punches on his opponent.
Great left jab, an improved left jab. There's a vicious, awkward punch.
When Foreman was stalling, Ali would land quick doubles to the head.
Oh, a great left hand.
The following rounds were no different in content. The champion aggressively locked his opponents up against the ropes and set up artillery bombardments. Muhammad's trainer, Angelo Dundee, shouted to his ward to stop taking punches.
George Foreman. Foreman not scoring these punches at all. Light pouring.
Ali didn't listen and continued to wear down the giant knockout artist with punches and pierce his defense with sharp series of punches. By the 5th or 6th round, Foreman's punches had lost their former power, and Muhammad had no problem tackling them.
Back him up. Foreman trying to back Ali up, and really...
The challenger was increasingly going on the counterattack. And sitting at ringside, Joe Frazier said that in his opinion, George wouldn't last long.
Then about the 6th round, he whispered in my ear after I'd hit him in the side, "That all you got, George?" And that was about all I had.
What happened next is history.
A sneaky right hand. Another sneaky right hand. This time he works over the shoulder of Foreman.
Ali riddled the tired Foreman for the amusement of the Zairian crowd and delivered one of the most recognizable knockouts in boxing history.
Suddenly the moment came. Watch it. And that was no phantom. That was no...
Muhammad broke Big George's 40-match winning streak and inflicted the only defeat of his career.
Everybody expected me to win that boxing match. All the odds makers had me ahead to win by knockout, as a matter of fact. And once I lost that fight, I was devastated.
The first defeat in the professional ring forced Foreman to take a break. He missed all of 1975 and returned to the ring only in January 1976. George's opponent was one of the best heavyweights in the world at the time, Ron Lyle. He was known for leading on all the judges' scorecards during his fight against Muhammad Ali, but lost by knockout in the 11th round.
Suddenly, from nowhere, the left cuts to Lyle. Sent him back against the ropes. Ali in total command, being separated.
After that, Lyle knocked out the most feared puncher, Ernie Shavers. Ron's advantage was his activity. While Foreman was idle, he was fighting and gaining conditioning.
Just look at this.
Lyle started the fight with a punch from the stratosphere.
He's got to win.
As the fight progressed, the boxers switched to a jab shootout.
Lyle in the white. Fights between those two. Effect of that is really...
Nothing foreshadowed trouble, but suddenly Ron threw a hard right punch and shook Foreman.
A good right by Lyle. A good right by Lyle, and he's got...
Only the final gong saved the former champion from more trouble. George was in no hurry to use his strength, remembering the sad experience of the fight with Muhammad Ali.
Lyle is giving Foreman no respect, and he's pressing the action now.
Lyle grew bolder and more often began to successfully attack Foreman.
Lyle in the white.
George was tired of being an outsider in the ring, and he made his presence known.
Hurt. Now Lyle is hurt. Quickly, Foreman landed a left and a right and another left, and Lyle's in trouble. He's against the rope. We'd have a slugfest, and that's what we've got.
Very good counter right hand by Lyle there.
In the 4th round, Ron caught a series of striking hooks.
And now truck. Lyle all over. Lyle has Foreman in trouble. Foreman is down. It started with a right, then a left.
After the knockdown, Foreman got up, shook off the dust, and sent Lyle himself into a dance.
Now Foreman fighting back. Oh, Foreman is in trouble. Lyle caught him with a good left. Now George. Now George struck back. Now George fought.
Big George regained his spirits and started throwing punches.
Against the rope. Lyle covering up against the rope. His hand was swinging the ball and giving him front. George at the edge.
Lyle gathered him all his power and snowballed it into a separate hook.
This isn't artistic.
The concrete head saved Foreman from a momentary fall, but the accumulated damage from his opponent's punches poured into a second knockdown.
Foreman goes down. Foreman goes down. Lyle.
George, in his customary fashion, survived the round and turned off the lights in the basement in the next.
Now it's Lyle. Now it's Lyle. Fight. Utterly without boxing skill. Just punching away. Each fighter in turn leaving himself open.
Both men are really working here. Foreman's using the power and Lyle's waiting just a little too long. They're both fighting. Lyle's got to come back with one down.
At the time of the knockdown, Foreman was losing the fight on 2 judges' scorecards, but managed to take a breather and knock Lyle out in the 5th round.
So I decided no giving up. I got him going. Bill Cosby had told me earlier, keep going. You don't want to hear none of this stuff.
That was it.
Subsequently, the fight was recognized as the best fight of 1976, and Big George got his 41st victory in the pro ring.
Sure display of rust.
Thank you, George.
A modern boxer after such a beating would have rested for at least a year, but Foreman returned to the ring after only 5 months, and even against Joe Frazier. The 2 old friends crossed gloves once again, as Frazier knocked out 2 top opponents after that defeat and had a great fight with Muhammad Ali in the Philippines. That event was highlighted Thriller in Manila. This time, Foreman ignored the scouting and went on the attack from the first seconds.
The hospital after that, and you question his conditioning, and one shot he can be.
Frazier did a good job of body work and softening up the bombardment.
In the boxing ring, depends on how many tough fighters.
Smokin' Joe was only saved by the fact that Foreman attacked in wide trajectories and looked predictable. Still, some percentage of his punches were on target, and missing from Big George is the last thing on the mind of any 70s heavyweight. The damage was piling up, and Frazier was rubbing his back against the ropes more and more often.
George is taking command again. Uppercut land, right hand.
In the 5th round, we saw the first knockdown. Joe rose up like a true warrior, but this battle was lost. Foreman gave his opponent terrible blows with both hands. From them, even a rock would collapse. George had 4 consecutive fights against the monsters of the time. So in the coming months, he downgraded the opposition and hurricaned the tough middleweights. One win separated Foreman from a new title fight. In March 1977, Big George traveled to Puerto Rico to fight Jimmy Young. It's a name not often mentioned among boxing fans, but you need to know that Young had beaten Ron Lyle twice, had a draw fight against Ernie Shavers, and gave Muhammad Ali a tough fight. Jimmy's style was honed on scoring points, which was an absolute rarity for the 70s. Against the background of terrible punchers, he looked like a white crow. But despite the uncomfortable style of his opponent, the favorite was Foreman, who gained after the defeat of Ali. George, in his usual manner, took control of the ring and began to look for holes in his opponent's defense. He won the first round in regular fashion. But the faster and more maneuverable Young adapted to Foreman's leisurely pressure and began to play his own game. George's trademark onslaught wasn't working, and his face looked puzzled. In the 3rd round, Foreman went for a guillotine, but his gloves got in the way. The referee didn't appreciate the heavyweight's jiu-jitsu and took the score off. The offense knocked Young out, and in the middle of the round, the initiative shifted to Big George. Nevertheless, In the second half of the match, Jimmy looked fresher and acted sharper than the heavy Foreman. And when the former world champion got tired, Jan was so brave that he arranged a meeting with his sponsors. So for the first time in his professional career, the famous heavyweight lost by judges' decision. After the fight, Foreman returned to the locker room and lost consciousness. When he woke up, the history of boxing was rewritten.
My experience in Puerto Rico, I think March the 17th in 1977, I went back into the dressing room and I was just cooling off. And I started walking and cooling my body off, and I was just overtaken with that I was going to die. And I experienced a death in that room. And
now, who were you fighting?
I had fought Jimmy Young, and I had just lost the fight, just a decision. It wasn't a tough fight or anything. I waited around to get the decision of the fight, and I saw that I had lost, and I went on back into the dressing room. Just a normal cooling off. And let me tell you, business picked up for me. I'd always prayed to God. I believe there was a God somewhere. But I said, you know, no matter what, everybody got their own religion so long as they treat people right. When I left that dressing room, I was screaming the name of Jesus. Let me tell you, I went back after I was snatched out of my body, and I don't know if you've ever been to the sea. As far off as you can see is nothing but water. Well, I saw it, but as far off as I could see was nothing but people caught out in like a trap. And I know this place was hell, but I said, I don't care. If this is death, I still believe in God. Then I was snatched right out of that place and taken to another place of life. And back into my body, and I started screaming, that's all right, I'm dying for God. And so, as I was sitting there, I was snatched into all kind of religions and brought back into the dressing room. I didn't know what was going on. So I got ready to get up off the table.
You actually felt you were dying.
I saw death, I saw it. I mean, I had built my whole life on real estate and what I had in the bank. And I saw it all like a big joke. I don't know if you stick a match to a piece of paper. For a moment, it stands up after it's burned, and then you touch it and it crumbles. I saw the whole world crumble behind me, and all I had was nothing. I had to leave all of that in the world, and I couldn't even tell my mother bye. I was dead. I was dead, and I started crying. I said, Lord, I don't want to die, and I don't want to die. I can still box, and I was just talking to God. I can still box. He said, I don't want your money. I want you. So as they laid on the table, I'm coming back into my body, and I told my doctor, there was 8 men in the room, to move his hand because the thorns are making him bleed. And blood started running down my face. And I told the other ones to move their hand because the blood on his hands was his bleeding on his hand, and on my feet there was blood. All the places where Jesus had died. And I never believed in Jesus. I wasn't gonna go for it. I never would have. But let me tell you, Jesus is alive. I started screaming, Jesus Christ is coming alive. And I walked out of that room, and I jumped up off the table and hit in a cold shower. I had to fight 8 men to get into a cold shower because that's the last thing you want an athlete to do after a fight, is to get into a cold shower, and there was no hot water. I started screaming words like, hallelujah, I've been born again.
Really?
And so in the dressing room, so I come out, and then from my stomach, the lower part of my stomach, I couldn't control no more of what I was saying. The only thing I could manage to say was, I don't know what I'm gonna say next. And I started speaking in tongues and everything in the dressing room.
Did you know what that was?
I didn't know nothing about none of it. I mean, I just sit there and I couldn't control myself. They thought I was crazy and hurt, and they took me to the doctor. You know, they thought I was losing my mind. And they took me to the hospital and ran all sorts of tests on me for about 2 or 3 days, and nothing was wrong with me. But I saw the glory of God. I saw it. Let me tell you that Jesus is alive. There's a living God, and I didn't even know it. I was wondering about it, but now I'm not wondering. I know. And I thank God because there's a lot of people who think for sure and maybe not, but I know. God, I don't know, for some reason, touched me, an old sinner, just an unclean man out in the world, just doing everything, and showed me that there's a living God. Since then, I've been telling everybody, I don't care where you come from, what are you doing, stop it and learn about God. And the Bible is here, it's been here for thousands and thousands of years. And why God did this for me, I don't know, but I just praise him every day. I dropped everything I was doing to tell the whole world that Jesus Christ is alive. God took me all over the country fighting in
Africa, Puerto Rico, Europe, everywhere, and I was just trying to exalt George Foreman. Now I'm going all over trying to tell him about Jesus.
What George told in the interview, someone thought it was the consequences of Young's punches. But the boxer really retired from boxing in the late 70s. Foreman was one of the richest athletes in the world, but because of religion, he refused to hurt other people. Also, in 1977, Big George became a preacher and invested in rebuilding a local church. He also became involved with troubled teens and opened a sports center for them. Foreman regularly did charity work and at one point found his accounts empty. A close friend of George invested the money accumulated by the boxer, and they went bust.
I'd made millions in my first career, literally millions of dollars. And by the time 10 years had gone by, I realized that I wanted to do a lot of good, and it took money to do it. I did a lot of things with money, and I looked up and didn't have the kind of money I wish I had. And that was one of the reasons I had to make a comeback to boxing. I was no longer the wealthy boxer who had undertaken being an evangelist.
To what extent was that largely the reason, the fact that you wanted funding for the youth center? And
one day I was out playing basketball with one of my attorneys, and we were playing ball, but he wanted to be serious with me and didn't know what to do. He said, "George, you have this place, but you got to be careful. You may become one of those bad stirrers like Joe Louis, a guy who had so much money and lost everything. And, you know, this place is costing you a lot of money, the George Foreman Youth Center." And I thought about, I'd had Rolls Royce convertible, I had swimming pools and homes, and here it is, I'm worried about having funds for this place that these kids need me. And that's when I decided I was gonna have to do something, raise some money. And I decided right then, I know how to get money. I'm gonna be heavyweight champion of the world again.
Foreman had been out of the ring for 10 years and didn't even maintain physical activity. He was overweight even for a heavyweight, and his first workouts were like hard labor. In addition, in his younger years, George, characterized by great physical strength, tore his back, pulling on his hump-year-old stallions and towing trucks. Therefore, the standard training had to be replaced by working with iron and cutting trees. In March 1987, exactly 10 years after his last fight, Foreman returned to the ring with a record weight of 121 kilos. In just 2 years, Big George knocked out a series of 18 consecutive knockouts. By the age of 40, the boxer had slowed down a lot, but began to pay more attention to defensive actions. Many experts of those years called the old Foreman an improved version of the young one. The first serious test of age George underwent in a fight with Jerry Cooney. Despite the age difference in favor of the latter, Foreman looked like a true dominator.
To work on with Jerry Cooney. Oh, there's a left.
It's the hardest hitter I've ever been in the ring with.
Right.
You'll fight, say, I've had about 60 or more boxing matches. Right. And you only meet 3 genuine punches throughout your career. Jerry Cooney, Ronnie Lyle, and a kid I worked with by the name of Cleveland Williams. And they hit so hard that it vibrates your body, even if you block it, just goes right to you.
So you would say Jerry Cooney was one of the hardest punchers you've ever met in the ring?
He's been the 3. Even harder than Joe Frazier with his left hook.
Harder than Joe Frazier?
Harder.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This fight last night went 4 grueling minutes.
Big trouble. He's ready to go. And there he goes.
Jerry got up after a hard knockdown, but Big George walked over and threw a couple of punches at the open door. Cooney couldn't bring himself to his senses for long. That's what happens when you get hit by a Texas locomotive.
And I don't think
Foreman's team considered fighting Mike Tyson.
But now people are talking more realistically about a bout with Tyson.
That's what I wanted. I didn't really come back to fight Jerry Cooney or anyone in particular. I came back to fight for the heavyweight championship of the world.
Now, is this
I want this
happen?
Mike Tyson.
Is it going to happen?
I will assure you I'll do it in the same fashion, 1 or 2 rounds. I guarantee
Have you ever met Mike Tyson?
I've met him.
Yeah. When was the last time you chatted with him?
He didn't want to speak too much, you know. It was more, I grabbed him and hugged him, and the next time he saw me, he ran. I guess he didn't want to be hugged.
Other famous heavyweight, Evander Holyfield. At that time, he was the absolute world champion in heavyweight and had a record of 25 non-su. Holyfield as a cardboard folded Buster Douglas, and his combination work took his opponents by surprise.
He's really upset. He's fighting angry. Holyfield trying to pull it out.
The fight was scheduled for April 1991, and the organizers were busy pre-match hyping the encounter. Evander, as the absolute world champion, was the clear favorite, but they were in no hurry to write off the 42-year-old Foreman either. By that time, George had racked up a streak of 24 consecutive victories, and his record was 69-2. For the first time in 16.5 years, he was beating heavyweight for the crown again. The bout drew a lot of attention from the boxing public, and 1.4 million pay-per-views were sold to fans. Holyfield's fee was over $20 million, and George's fee was over $12.5 million. Foreman came out to bless his once nemesis and now close friend Muhammad Ali. The audience welcomed George's announcement with loud applause.
The challenger and former heavyweight champion of the world,
The favorite started the fight very energetically, showing his advantage in speed and pure boxing skill.
As expected, pressing the action. Got to use that speed from the outside here, and then do exactly that. Pop and go. That's what Foreman does halfway through the first round. Oh, and Holyfield with a combination. Left hook, right hand. With the left, Foreman is. And here comes Holyfield. Good left.
But Foreman's jabs sent Evander's head flying off like a volleyball.
George.
In the second round, Big George became more active and gave the young man some fatherly admonitions.
Good exchange.
Looked like he ran into a little bit of a left hook. Oh!
Foreman on the attack.
You're not kidding. Oh, another right
from Foreman. And a combination.
Despite Foreman's local successes, Evander had the initiative in the fight. He attacked more often and more accurately, and even tried to break the veteran's strong chin.
Oh, and rock Holyfield. Holyfield
on the attack and connecting, and Holyfield all over Foreman. Foreman trying to hold him off. It's Holyfield now on the attack. George is scrambling forward and hit after the bell by a crisp right.
George did not give up under pressure and returned the favor.
George, a bit of a low punch in there as well.
Well, he's fighting. Well, I'll tell you what, that's what he's got to do, George. He's got to hit that body to slow Holyfield.
Oh, George is missing with that looping right.
But
another low left.
He is right now. He looked like a
doing it
man last round.
Everyone talked about his right hand. He's gotten some good lefts to the chin. And Foreman with another combination.
You know, George Foreman always promoted his strength. His strength was his everything.
Yeah.
And like this, and so, you know, and so he pulling the big old truck on his shoulders and all this and stuff like that. And so, you know, I had people talking about, well, he did this, he did that. I said, look, hey, I said, boxing is not all about strength. I said, no. I said, he got to try to hit me. I said, he's slow as Christmas. I said, he's slow as Christmas. I said, you know, he's not fast. I said, you know, so he throw these big shots. But the difference is that he got good timing. And so that's what I realized, because I pulled back, and by the time I pulled back from the shot ain't got done yet. Bam! I bring my head back because that's how slow he is. His timing, but he got right time. He know that you gonna come back at the right time when you, because he's supposed to don't miss me, and I come back.
Bam.
When I come back, it's coming. Oh, Yes. Right? So I realized, oh, okay, then I got to dance around him a little bit and pack him like this. And so the whole big thing about boxing is making the guy come forth while you punching at the same time. That's how you can maximize your power on him.
Due to his age, Foreman had to take pauses. And during this time, Holyfield scored points on the judges' scorecards.
Oh, strong right from Holyfield. Back and forth action here. And a left from Holyfield. Oh, strong left.
The veteran recalled his youth in round 6, 7, 10, putting the young champion on the spot.
I think he just knocked him off balance. I don't know if he hurt him. But his legs look unsteady right now.
Oh! More punches from Foreman, and Holyfield absorbs it in the middle of the ring. And Foreman on the attack in the 7th round.
But watch him come back.
But Evander came back stronger each time.
Right now, Evander, too close. Oh! Right hand rocked Foreman. He's out on Foreman right now.
In trouble. Foreman, you cannot be saved by the bell. And Holyfield is all over Foreman. There's the bell. George trying to cover up, and Holyfield landed. And another strong right, and a left from Holyfield. And one to the body from Holyfield. Another strong right.
The final round, as it should be two great champions, passed in mutual attack.
As you mentioned, Angelo done round from our estimation to win this fight. But he certainly had his moments along the way. One big bomb, but he lands a right. And Holyfield comes on strong with a stage there by Holyfield with 15 seconds to go in the fight. And the crowd at the Atlantic City Convention Center comes to its feet to applaud that.
Evander won the fight by unanimous decision of the judges and retained the title of absolute world champion. However, Foreman showed even more than expected in the ring and solidified the love of the fans.
It was a good fight. Everybody was happy. I was completely contented because I went to 12 rounds. I thought I had him knocked out 2 or 3 times. Maybe I spent too much time looking for a knockout, not on making points. The thing is, I got a game champion we have. Everybody should be proud of that fella.
What kind of game plan did you go in with, George, and what kind of adjustments did you have to make?
I went in looking for a knockout, and then in the middle rounds, I realized, hey, this guy's going to be around. So I started to build up points, not enough. And but realistically, he fought a great fight. I feel contented because I showed, look, he won, but it had nothing to do with my age. He had to reach deep down within him and prove that he was a champion. And I reached down and proved. And in the end, I had him holding on. But someone let a mule loose, and he kept kicking me.
Deep down in your heart, did you really believe that you could go the distance and perform that well?
Oh, yeah. It was a matter of just getting out there doing it. I was out of the ring for 10 years. Didn't even box. I came back to become a bona fide contender. Fought the heavyweight champion to somebody had to get the decision, and he's a fine man. He deserves it. But I proved for sure, age 40, 50, 60 is not a death sentence. You may get a lot of bruises, but hey, mile.
Despite the defeat, George was not going to think about ending his career until he became a world champion again. He produced a streak of 3 straight wins, defeating Jimmy Ellis, Alex Stewart, and Pierre Kotzer.
Your coach is the type of guy that,
In June 1993, the 44-year-old Foreman became the challenger for the vacant WBO title. His dance opponent was young heavyweight star Tommy Morrison, with a record of 36-1. Morrison was 20 years younger than George.
really to get himself back and put good left hand down goes toss. All time. The question's here.
Foreman, in his usual fashion, would go to his opponent first, push him down, and deliver sprawling but crushing punches in the aftermath. Morrison took Holyfield's tactics as a basis, worked in the return form, moved a lot, and did not get involved in unnecessary exchanges. As a result, Tommy was able to realize a functional advantage over the aging heavyweight and won most of the rounds. All three judges gave the win to Morrison. After two lost title fights, the press started talking about the fact that it was time for Foreman to take a well-deserved retirement.
George Foreman and Tommy Morrison. Was this George Foreman's last fight? He loses the unanimous decision to Morrison in Las Vegas.
Foreman, he said going in this would probably be his last fight, and the way he was decidedly outpointed by Tommy Morrison tonight.
It's all about personal punishment, respectful dislike for your opponent. But George Foreman admitted before his title fight tonight he likes the kid that he was fighting. Tommy Morrison, 20 years his younger, of Rocky V movie fame. Foreman has found fame in his comeback, and his next definite date is a network TV sitcom. Tonight, though, he was fighting for the WBO title, maybe a Foreman farewell.
It was the mid-90s. The 45-year-old George was idle for almost a year and a half, but his past accomplishments allowed him to get a third chance. In November 1994, Foreman stepped into the ring against WBA and IBF champion Michael Moorer with a record of 35-0. Curiously, Moorer had taken those titles away from Evander Holyfield. The experts didn't give George a chance.
Mike Tyson was away in prison. Evander Holyfield and Riddick Bowe were in the process of deteriorating each other. Lennox Lewis had lost unexpectedly to Oliver McCall, so the landscape was open.
Few days after Michael Moorer beat Evander Holyfield, I got a call from George. And I said, George, you can't kid me. You want to fight Michael Moorer. And he said, more than anything else in the world, get me that fight.
I just want to go out there, show the world that 45 and 55 is not a death sentence. We can do anything we want to do.
It sort of became everybody's friend. And a great quote. Let me talk to George. George will give me a quote. He didn't even ask you, what do you need?
Moorer lost patience with his antics.
I knew what Teddy had told me, like, he's a big con. And I just look at him like,
go get me a sandwich and sit down.
Man, you're so fake. Back then, I was probably very confrontational.
He was worse than reclusive. He was almost antagonistic to the point where you almost felt, not knowing any better, that it might be dangerous to be with him.
If you asked a question that he felt was stupid, he would say, that's a stupid question.
And to myself, I be, this ass was going to ask me to be. Dumbest question ever.
You're right, everyone does ask that question.
And now, you know how sports writers are. They're the smartest guys in the room. So they don't want to hear that from a fighter.
I'm not going to put on no act or put on no show for nobody.
People already thought he was a little mean, so we said, everybody thinks he's mean? Well, let's run with it anyway. So now you have the good versus evil.
Tonight, live from the MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada, HBO Sports presents World Championship Boxing as Michael Moorer, WBA and IBF heavyweight champion, defends his title against the one and only George Foreman.
There are a lot of skeptics out there who think that George now is more King Khan than King Kong. George hasn't earned this championship shot as a fighter. He hasn't fought in a year and a half, and on that auspicious occasion, he lost to Tommy Morrison. On the other hand, George is a star, and stardom, like age, has its privileges. There are many, many champions and very, very few stars. That's why he's here.
And he booed me. It doesn't matter. I was still champion.
Michael knew, he's not a dummy, that night in the arena, if they seat 19,000, 18,500 were going to be cheering for Foreman.
At that point, I just thought that middle-aged men don't knock out 25-year-old heavyweight champions.
All the boys ran in here. Take the hands to lunch.
The age difference is 18 years. Michael is at his peak, and Foreman is well past his prime, and the analysts' predictions were coming true.
Confidence. I liked that he was starting to feel good about being champ and feel confident and trying to fulfill what everyone said he wasn't.
Teddy might have created a monster.
Consistent guy. Our sparring partners were better.
Teddy always knew that instilling confidence in Michael was one of the keys to getting him to perform at a certain level.
I have a sense here, Gil, that Moorer feels as though he has felt Foreman's power and it's not going to hurt him. That could be a big mistake.
I had no intention of throwing out my power at him in the first, second, or third round.
He didn't have control over the fight. He didn't have control over me.
And my intentions were to extend him and make certain that when I hit him with one shot, he would not get up.
There's no reason for you to stand there and let him find you.
I never could understand why he was being so courageous. Instead of how a big man like that.
We're allowing Foreman to land, and the big man is getting off to good effect in round 6. Listen to me, you're not going to have a real friendly corner. I'm proud of you, but you're not going to have a friendly corner if you keep letting him go slow. All right? You're going to make him go faster?
I thought I was doing fine, but he's on the outside looking in. I can't see what he sees. He can't see what I see.
So I can perfectly understand how if Teddy was saying do this, do that, between rounds 4, 5, and 6, and 7, Michael was thinking, why do I need to listen to anything? Everything I do is working.
What people don't remember is up until the 10th round, Michael fought the best fight of his career. I mean, he was tremendous that night.
I think he was brilliant for the first 9 rounds.
He was doing everything right, but I was doing something he had not prepared for.
How can you say he was setting me up for a 1-2?
I don't think Teddy Atlas and those trainers knew exactly what I was doing.
That's bullshit. Totally.
What's not bullshit is that George knew his best chance to hit you was with a blind punch you wouldn't see.
That's those slow reflexes. I think the myth of George's power has been exposed by Michael Morris so far.
He's swollen up, but he was losing. He was starting to wonder whether or not he was going to pull it off.
Moorer outpointed the aging slow veteran and led on all the judges' scorecards.
I fought Muhammad Ali in Africa, and I know what it felt when he got in the ring and everyone was cheering for him. I could hurt him, but the crowd just kept him on his feet. Now, for the first time in my life, I was feeling the same thing.
Here was a guy that was clearly on a mission in his own life. You just knew you were dealing with something that mentally was a little different.
I was able to get a body punch in, just one body shot.
He threw that left hook just to move this guy. I gotta get him to move this way. If he moves this way, I'm not gonna be able to land this punch.
I would hurt them. I'd use the old cattle tactics.
So he was calm. He had the ability to think like that.
I knew then if I knocked him down once, he would have to stay down.
Win or lose, George is going to have a left eye swollen shut tonight. George's best punch is still that left jab.
And my jab was going to be the most important punch in the boxing match.
He'd still snap a left jab out, but not too much else.
So don't worry, Mike, I'm an old man. Don't worry about that. And you stand there. And then all of a sudden, boom, bang, there's a right hand right behind it.
Don't stay there because he's looking to set you up one shot, and then he'll open up a combination to the edge.
Moorer outpointed the aging slow veteran and led on all the judges' scorecards after the 9th round. What happened in the ring in the 10th round can't be called anything but a miracle.
The first punch I hit him with was the straight right. It was just a little too high. He didn't move out of the way because he was kind of stunned.
And Moorer later told me that he was basically out on his feet before the last 1-2.
I expected him to fall, it didn't. And I said right then I was going to lower it just a little bit.
Foreman, with a barely noticeable killing double straight, turns off Moorer's lights and becomes world champion at the age of 45. This record has not been broken by anyone to this day.
I think that George has advanced ring intelligence.
I had this all playing out for the previous 3 months.
Bullshit. Don't fake it. You got lucky.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it.
Nobody had any idea that I was setting this fight up all night.
He never saw it coming. Everything disconnected.
My body was completely dead.
I was devastated.
I had told George for months, George, how are you going to find him? You haven't fought in a long time. He moves in there. He goes at a different angle. He's a southpaw. He wouldn't stand still for Holyfield. Why would he stand still for you? And George said, you watch. Somewhere late in the fight, he's going to come stand in front of me.
Wow. I dreamed I knocked Michael Moorer out before that fight.
George knew this all along. George saw this from maybe, from 5 years before. this is Zaire all over again, but I'm the guy who's going to win this time. I'm the guy who's going to be too smart for that other guy.
I lose the title in Zaire, and that wasn't the best of me. There I'm on the canvas, I try to beat the count. I had all kinds of excuses, but it was a hard thing, and it had been a hard thing to live down that you are the heavyweight champ of the world, yet you don't have the title. For years, I had to live with it.
I saw George at a function here a few months back, and they showed the tape of him knocking me out. And I'd said a few words. I says, just think, if I'd have ducked one more time, we'd be sounding Michael Moore girls instead of George Foreman girls.
Somebody once asked me if was George Foreman winning the heavyweight title at age 45 tougher than Jack Nicklaus winning the Masters at age 46. And as much as I love Jack Nicklaus, nobody was hitting Jack Nicklaus. Michael Moore was still punching George Foreman.
George Foreman said numbers are for accountants, and he proved it in the ring where it counts. The oldest man to challenge, and now the oldest man to win the heavyweight crown. George Foreman, hallelujah.
Hey, hallelujah is the word. Hallelujah. You know, it's not important that I won the heavyweight champion. The most important thing that may be overlooked is that I was given the opportunity to fight for the title. Amen. This is a place, this is a country where if you really believe in yourself, they'll give you a second and a third chance. Amen. I'm here as living proof that this is a compassionate society that doesn't give up on the underprivileged even when they get to be, how old am I?
You'll be 46 in 10 weeks, George.
At the age of 46, Big George defended his IBF title against Axel Schulze. The German heavyweight looked preferable to the veteran, but the victory went to the richer and more famous boxer. In 1997, however, the universe returned the balance. Foreman was outright robbed in a bout with Shannon Briggs, who was 23 years younger. Amazingly, Briggs was going with a 29-1 record, one of the scariest punchers at the time. It is he who holds the record for the most knockouts in the first round.
And it's all over, surely.
However, George, who was nearly 49 years old, did not let the youngster breathe.
This really shows you what a specific art boxing. He slapped and punched him. You see that?
Yeah, it's rich, isn't it?
If you have a jab. Very easy if you have a jab. Oh, Shannon's starting to feel real bad now. Unload. Very more shot. Hard right hand across the top for Foreman.
Nevertheless, by decision of the majority of judges, the victory went to the more promising Briggs.
Shannon Briggs won that boxing match. I've had 80, or I don't know, 76, 78 victories.
In your heart of heart, do you think you won the fight?
Well, it's kind of childish. If you win a boxing match, they give it to you. If you lose it, they take it away. You just go on about yourself. I learned this from you, Larry. The only thing count is tomorrow. It's not, yesterday is dead and gone. If I could do it all over again, I probably would have thrown a few more punches and gone more for a knockout. But this is an excellent young man. He just lost his mother not too long ago, and he's had a hard life. And if that victory can help him,
it was clear that your corner thought you won the fight. Most people in the audience thought you won the fight. Going into the last round, did you feel you'd won the fight? You didn't have to score a knockout?
Well, that fight is gone, Larry. You got to start crying about something for tomorrow.
It was this fight that marked the final point in the great Foreman's career, with a record of 76-4 and 68 knockouts. George finally hung up his gloves. Despite his long and difficult career, the American heavyweight had kept both his health and his sanity. In 1999, the boxer sold his rights to his barbecue grill company for $138 million. That's more than Foreman earned in 30 years in the ring. After the end of his career, George worked as a commentator on the HBO channel and devoted time to his family. The champion has 12 children, including 6 sons. Unfortunately, on March 21, 2025, George Foreman passed away at the age of 76. The news shocked the world. George left a tremendous legacy both outside the ring as a preacher and a successful businessman, and inside the ring. Throughout his career, Foreman fought 81 bouts, securing 76 victories, 68 of them by knockout. Big George Foreman was a heavyweight world champion and the Olympic champion of 1968. Foreman's career epitomizes the golden era of boxing in the 70s and 90s. When boxers faced the toughest challenges of their lives, For the love of fans and full arenas, George faced all the legends of his time and never once shamed his honor. This man rose up after heavy defeats and only came back stronger. Foreman never solved issues with dirty methods and always resolved them with two concrete fists. That rare case when an insanely scary knockout artist left behind a good impression and an impeccable reputation as a professional.